The Ontario legislature saw and heard something special today. A First Nations member of Parliament, Sol Mamakwa, rose and spoke in his Indigenous language. It was both eloquent and groundbreaking.
They will never permit Indigenous language to be spoken in the provincial legislature. But today, it's allowed. It's a historical event.
The CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick is at Queen's Park in Toronto and joins me live. So Megan, tell us about this landmark moment.
Well, the day started early this morning, Andrew, with a welcoming ceremony on the lawn of Queen's Park with Sol Mamakwa and some of his family members, including his mother, his brother, sister, other relatives, elders who had traveled here to Toronto from his home community of Kingfisher Lake First Nation. And then in the chamber, just ahead of the speech, when Sol Mamakwa introduced his mother, who is sitting there watching all of this, the entire legislature sang her happy birthday. It is her 79th birthday today. And then he gave his speech, and it was a historic moment. Of course, he spoke in his remarks about how Indigenous people have been prevented from speaking their languages, including in residential schools. Sol Mamakwa himself attended a residential school. He talked about the importance of revitalizing these languages and keeping them alive, and of teaching children today these languages. He paid tribute to his mother during his remarks, expressing gratitude to her for teaching him the language when he was a child. He talked about how he feels himself, he's been losing his own language after years of working in this building. He was emotional. Everyone looking on really felt the significance of this moment, that moment, and that seemed to include Premier Doug Ford, Andrew, who after the speech was over, crossed the floor and went over to shake Sol Mamakwa's hand and gave him a bit of an embrace. And then afterwards, Sol Mamakwa also led off question period by asking the first question of the government, again in his own language. And that question was about long-term care for elderly people in his home community. And he was challenging the government to keep a promise it had made years ago to expand the number of long-term care beds in that community of Sioux Lookout. And Premier Ford responded to that question. Here's how that played out.
I had you in my office yesterday, told you how proud I am of you, how you're blazing a new trail, you know, and no one's ever done this, what you're doing today. And I just want to tell you that how proud I am of you, how proud everyone here in the legislature, how proud everyone in the First Nations. And I appreciate your passion in Sioux Lookout. I went up to Sioux Lookout, and you remember I went up there, and I committed that I'm going to build that long-term care home. I'm committing today, in the public, we will be building those beds. We'll be building a home for Sioux Lookout. So thank you.
So, Andrew, those are obviously not the kinds of moments we see very often at Queen's Park. And afterwards, Sol Mamakwa did speak to reporters and say how proud he was of what took place here today. He said the moment felt really surreal. Again, he said this is a day he never thought would happen. He worked to change the rules. Before, it was only French and English that were allowed to be spoken in the chamber. He worked with Paul Calandra, the government House Leader, to change the rules, not only to allow himself to speak today in his own language, but any future Indigenous MPP who works here at Queen's Park will be allowed to speak their language according to the new rules. Sol Mamakwa speaking to us after, saying he hopes this is not just that this will set an example for other legislatures across the country. Take a listen.
I call on, other provincial legislatures. I call on the federal House of Commons. They have to institute, the standing orders that allow Indigenous languages to be spoken in these places. Stop being colonial. It's a simple step towards reconciliation.
Andrew, there were some logistics that had to happen in order to make this happen in terms of translation. And so when Mamakwa was speaking in his language, the translators that work here at Queen's Park, they were also translating what he was saying into French and in English. And if he wants to continue doing this, which he says he does, they're going to have to work on that and ensure that translation services are available. But this is a first for that to be happening today, and for his remarks to be recorded and answered as well in his own language. He described today as a home run, and again, he was just full of pride over what happened here today.
And Megan, the gallery was packed with special visitors for this occasion. What are they saying about the experience?
Well, and I think the most special guest of honor, again, was his mother. Several people I talked to afterwards really highlighting that, what a moment that was for her to be able to be there and watch her son speak the language that she taught him when he was a child, and that he was prevented from speaking when he went to residential school. He said he was thinking of his late father throughout his speech. Other Indigenous leaders we spoke to after saying they are proud of him. They are full of gratitude for what he did today, and they said he is just simply an inspiration. Take a listen.
So I went to day school for 6 years, so for sure not having the ability to connect with your first language is really important. You know, Sol's community and the people from his community are really closely connected to the land, and when you're connected to the land, you know, your family members and your community make sure that your language is so strong. So, boy, this is a proud moment today, you know. You can just feel it right here.
We spoke to another woman who is also a residential school survivor. She said there were tears streaming down her face as she sat there watching it, and she said she felt like her heart was going to burst. Andrew?
Megan, thank you. The CBC's Megan Fitzpatrick live at the Ontario Legislature.